Welcome to Invitation to the Cookout. It's your boy DapperDom. Got my guy TheeAlexMac. And we got another amazing guest in the studio with us today. But before I introduce her, let's go ahead and take care of some business. You guys already know. Hit that like, share, subscribe button. Each one reach one. What you tell them to do, my guy?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Tell a friend to tell a friend. As a matter of fact, turn on your notifications too. Let your phone let you know when your new favorite podcast just dropped a new episode.
That's right.
So whether you're watching us on YouTube, listening to us on Apple or Spotify, we appreciate you accepting our invitation to the cookout. And without further ado, let me introduce our amazing guest today. She's a trust officer at Arvest Bank. She's a former estate planning attorney. She loves making financial topics real and relatable, whether that's through community events, whether that's through one-on-one conversations, or whether that's through speaking engagements. And when she's not making people feel secure about their future financially, she's spending time with her husband and her 4 kids, being intentional about creating space in a well-balanced life. Miss Iffy Ibekwe.
Hi, welcome to the cookout.
Yes. How did you memorize all that? I'm like, is he going to say all the bullet points?
Hey, we got to make sure we lay out the red carpet for our guests now.
That's fantastic. You should. I want you to like introduce me, just like.
Hey, look,
Personal hype.
let me know when we maybe can line some things out.
Please, I'm like, your memory is still good.
She said,
but we appreciate you coming to sit down with us today.
Pleasure.
If you're not familiar with our podcast, or our listeners, if you're not familiar with our podcast is about food, it's about health and wellness, it's about culture, and a big piece of that wellness is financial wellness. And so we talk about, like at the cookout, we talk about sports, we talk about entertainment, but definitely we don't talk about finances like we should, especially the topic that you're going to kind of deep dive a little bit into later on in the show, estate planning. Definitely, I know we're not having that at my cookout. No. Probably should. But yeah, so we felt it was important to have you on. And the first segment of our show is called Chop It Up. So where Alex and I really can just talk about whether it's current events or just anything that we want to talk about, or maybe even a snippet into what's to come later on in the show. But since April is Financial Literacy Month, I wanted to kick a question over to Alex first, and then you can chime in if you would like. What does financial literacy mean to you, and why do you feel like it was important to have an expert like Iffy on our show today to talk about estate planning?
Financial literacy to me, it means some kind of base understanding and knowledge of finance. Okay. That could be budgeting. Yep. That could be investing. That could be just general money management. Yep. I think for our community, it's important because, like you said, it's a conversation that is not talked about enough. Yeah. I can recall growing up, and even now there being just a secrecy to money in our community, whether it's like how much you make, or what do you do with your money, and I feel like that's probably put us behind. Okay. I don't know if it's a fear, or if, like I said, I feel like in our community we have a lot of these traditions that are passed down from grandmama and them, and we never stop and be like, well, why don't we talk about money, right? And so I think it's one of the things that's probably holding us back. And I think for me, being in the food space, being a food scientist is one of those things where you like diet. You're like, man, people know what diet, or you think people know, like, hey, you should like eat more fruits and vegetables, and you eat, these types of things. But as you interact and talk with people, you find like that baseline level of knowledge is not there. Yep. So to me, that's why I think this is ultimately important, because there's a lot of people who just aren't equipped with that knowledge. I know I've been through my own journey just trying to get financially
I'm in my journey,
right? So
I'm in mine.
I think that I think they're like college, like you got your 101, your 201. So I think there's levels of it that we need to just become more comfortable talking with. And one thing that we try to do with this platform is we're not just gonna bring anybody off the streets. We try to bring credible people that we feel like you guys can trust with the information they're sharing. So no better time than now to do that.
Yeah. What about for you? Like, what?
I love the 101 and 201. It's like the college level, and then you have graduate level, and then you have like your doctoral level. You can take it as far as you want to go. I think financial literacy is a lifelong journey.
Okay.
As things change and people change and the markets change and your needs change, there's always, in every aspect of life, reason to inform yourself about your finances. And you're right, there's a lot of taboo associated with finance when it comes to your family of origin, what they talked about, what was expected, what was assumed, right?
Yes.
What was considered impolite conversation, right? Not bragging, making sure that you hoarded your resources, maybe not depending on how people are raised. And this is like across all kinds of communities, like your money story really affects how you look at money, like what you
your
saw
relationship,
in your household, what you saw in your community, and maybe what you picked up along the way. And I think that the idea that people think that they should have already arrived when it comes to finances, it's like a shame associated with it. They're like, should I not know this?
Yes.
Right? But many of us didn't get taught that in elementary, middle, high school, college, graduate school. I mean, as far as you go, a lot of people don't learn about finances. So I think the first thing to realize, since it's Financial Literacy Month, is just to give yourself grace and start where you are and know that there is always information that you can learn and something you can build upon.
Also,
That's perfect.
yes, it is perfect. Now, our main segment of our show is kind of like what we call like the meat and potatoes of our show. It's called What's on the Grill. And so what's on the grill today is we're just going to give you the floor. We're going to talk about estate planning. Like, what is estate planning? Like, is that the same as a trust or a will? What's the different aspects of estate planning? Also, too, thinking about like what are like costs and fees, or like you said, like some of that taboo that may be related to estate planning. And so, just kind of, if you want to talk about like what you currently do, and then kind of talk about like what is estate planning.
Yes. So I, in my capacity as a senior trust officer at Arvest Bank in Northwest Arkansas, my title is a little bit misleading. I do business development. I consider myself an evangelist for the bank. And letting people to know about our trust services. And I will just rewind a little bit to let you know how I even got here. Next year will be my 20th anniversary of being a lawyer, which is shocking. So I graduated from law school 20 years. That was not for applause. That was more to show how old I am.
We popped our collar.
I didn't realize how much reading you guys had.
I didn't read for years after law school because I literally could not read for fun.
Like it's a lot of reading. Like I have a few friends that are lawyers, and I was like, that's too much reading for me. Like, what I think, like, because like you have to read, like even when you become a lawyer, like
you
in cases and stuff, you're always reading.
Yes.
I was like, nah, fam.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I'm a reader, so I love that. Legal reading is another level, but I always tell my kids readers are leaders. So everyone listening, it does not hurt to put some more words in your head.
It does not.
You don't have to go to law school. But after I finished law school, I practiced law for about 16 years prior to starting my role here at the bank. And in my last 5 years of practice, I was an estate planning attorney. And I had my own law firm in Austin, Texas, with my team down there and all of that. And so this is what we did primarily, was estate planning. And to your question, what is estate planning? Estate planning is the umbrella term. If you can think about the umbrella shape, and then underneath it are certain things you've probably heard of. Like you've heard of a will, you've heard of a living will probably, you've heard of a trust, powers of attorney, you've heard of medical directives, healthcare power of attorney. Like you've heard these buzzwords, and those would all be under the umbrella of estate planning. So when we tell people, okay, you need to get your will done, right? Have you gotten your will done? Have you gotten a trust? I think the better question is, do you have an estate plan? And the reason to ask that is because if you do not have a plan, every single state has a plan for you. The default is whatever your state has set up, right? for what's going to happen to your assets, what's going to happen to all of your belongings. So it is to your benefit to set up an estate plan, which basically is, here are the instructions of what I want done to my physical body if I'm in need of healthcare interventions, to my finances if I'm unable to manage them for myself while I'm alive. And then when you pass away, to my property, to my business, to my children, should something happen. All of that is under the umbrella of estate plan. It's basically getting your wishes down on paper and signing them and saying, this is what I would like to have done.
Yeah. When you talk about, because I think most of the time when we think about will and trust, we think about like after death.
Yes.
But let's talk about that piece like prior to death. When you talked about giving in your estate planning, I guess like power of attorney to make decisions for you as you get older. Like, can you dive into like what are some of those like health decisions that they'll be able to make for you because you've written that out of like yes.
And this comes up a lot. I don't know how old y'all are. I actually can't tell. I can't tell how old people are, but in the
39. I'm 39.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're very close.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, there's a woman named Terry Schiavo. I believe she was in her mid-20s. And she was married, no kids, and ended up in a vegetative state.
Okay.
Right? Where there was no brain activity, and, you know, she had her parents who loved her dearly and a husband. They could not agree on what to do. I believe her parents wanted to keep her living, and her husband remembered a conversation about, you know what, she said, if this, mind you, I think she was maybe 25. So correct me, Google me, and make sure I'm correct in this. And he's like, I think I remember her saying that she would not want to be in this condition. They ended up going into litigation over whether or not to pull the plug. There were no instructions. And so a lot of people would think, well, my mom is going to be the one who knows. Or they were like, oh, obviously your spouse. But that's an example of family does not agree. And there are some decisions that you have the opportunity to make so that, God forbid, you're in that situation. They're not fighting over, like, not only the news, the horror of getting news like that, but now the family's breaking apart, right? And now you're also involving lawyers. And I believe I want to say it went up pretty high in the courts as well, and the cost of that and the time and all of that. So what you can do is you can have your wishes put on paper while you're alive. So if you're ever incapacitated, you can say, this is the person that is going to make the decision for me. I'm going to appoint Alex. You're up. And if Alex can't serve, Dom, you're up next. And if Dom can't serve, then this person's up next. And you can even put it in an order of contingencies, who would step in. And the idea of that is by using something called a healthcare power of attorney. You can name who your agent is to act on your behalf if you cannot act on your own behalf. Similarly, with financial decisions, if you are unable to make financial decisions, God forbid, again, say you're incapacitated, who's paying your mortgage? Who's going to get into your accounts? Who's going to pay your bills? Do you want everything to go to default? Probably not. And so you need to also appoint, okay, Dom, you're up next. You're up first. Alex, you're second. These are the people who have access to my accounts, who would be able to make decisions for me if something were to happen. In these scenarios, you're alive. Right? And so this is not I died and then this happens. This is only your healthcare power of attorney and your financial power of attorney are only effective while you're alive. When you're dead, that's over, right? But you have to put something down on paper so that happens.
You know, when it comes to if you don't have anything on paper, can you give us an example of, say, you are incapacitated and you haven't put anybody as your power attorney to make financial decisions on your behalf? Like, is there certain things like this the state just defaults and does for you, or like how does that work?
Well, I can tell you, without giving away a lot of information, that I received a call very similar to this, where someone wanted to find out, just this person in my life is incapacitated. Do they have a bank account with you? Do they have a mortgage with you? You know, do they have I know they have a bank account. Do they have any payable of death? Like, so basically can designate who gets your, and while the person was alive, they didn't have a financial power of attorney. And so we can't give any of that information out. I can see it, but I can't tell you anything. When that person dies, similarly, that information, like without having the proper directive, you don't have any power to make. You can be the most loving parent, or that's an adult that has not designated anyone. That is a stuck situation. Upon death, you really have to go then hire a lawyer and get the official documents that allow you to then make those decisions. And so, and this is just like, it just is going to depend, right? In scenarios like that, that person doesn't have any legal access. So technically, you're then stuck.
Okay.
Right? If this is like a long-term incapacitation or something like that, where maybe in a scenario where you'd have to become a guardian over that person, that involves going to court, right? There's no sort of, okay, well, then you just get to have access, right? Now, if you have a joint account or something, that's one thing. The other person can have the access. But other than that, you're going to have to take some legal steps in order to get access to that information or that account or something like that.
In your opinion, why do you feel like we're so behind? It just seems like seems like we're just behind as in this space.
Yeah.
Is it just the fear of talking about these situations and just trying to avoid it, or what are maybe some thoughts as to why you think we're so behind in this space?
I think just nationally, I think the statistic, and I think it's from caring.com, is only about 30-something%. I want to say low 30% of people have an estate plan.
Yeah, so I saw, I think on CNBC.com and like blackenterprise.com, it said 70%, well, I'm going to take it to our culture, 70% of African Americans do not have a estate plan.
Yeah.
And only about, I think, 31% even talk to their parents about what they want to do, like when death comes, as far as like how you want to be buried, like cremated, or you want to have a burial, where you want to be buried,
how you're going to pay for it,
how you're going to pay for it.
That's the big one right there.
Then talk about a cookout. Then people are having fish fries and cookouts trying to raise money.
GoFundMes.
And so
for sure.
You, like, everyone listening's goal should be that there shouldn't be a cookout to put you in the ground or to cremate you. That is a failing, because you have time right now, right? I think one of the reasons people they don't do it is because there's a lot of trauma there. Like, if you probably know a lot of people who had to deal with somebody who didn't do the right thing, right? And the cost of it, and like the pain, you're grieving, and you're also trying to like close down their estate, the expense of it. That is one level of it, right? People have lost properties, like generational properties. There's properties that are tied up right now because no instructions were given, and
I read
taxes haven't been paid,
I read an alarming state. I read something that said by the year, I think it's 2047, African Americans are going to lose about 67 trillion in wealth because we don't
trillion with the T.
They with a T. That's what it said.
Wow.
Fact check me, but
yes,
with a T.
I almost feel though so I do have an estate plan.
Okay.
Well, my wife got cancer a couple years ago, and we were, young 30s. I didn't really want to. I'm gonna tell you, I didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about death, but she was like, I actually remember we were gonna go to Mayo. And my parents watching the kids, and we just like, what if something happens on the plane right there? And
that's often where people come to the estate plan, because they don't feel comfortable going on vacation.
Yeah, it's like you don't
want to get on a plane. You don't want to leave your family.
And I don't know why we fear death so much, because it's going to happen regardless. You know what I mean? And so when do you think somebody should set up an estate plan? Like how early?
When you're an adult.
So is that 18? Is that 25? Because I know like your
At
story.
18, there's stuff you can start to do. Yeah, just think about it. You know, a lot of people, they go off to college. Say you go the college route, and maybe you have a parent or your parents are the ones that have done everything for you. You turn 18, they don't have access to any of that.
Yeah.
So one of the things you can do, even just starting off the bat, would be to look into whether it would make sense for you to have a financial and medical power of attorney and name your parents. You're still 18. I know at 18, I felt like a child. I felt like a child until I was like 27.
Oh, look, sometimes I still get around my parents and be like, hey,
I'm still a baby.
You do know I'm an adult too. The way they talk to me sometimes,
I might be opposite. I'm like, treat me like a child. I don't want the responsibilities. Treat me like a baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are things you can start even then. I know for another example that came up when I was in practice, private practice, we would do student records release, right? Because under FERPA, it's private, right? You don't have to release, even if your parents are paying for school or somebody's paying for school, they don't have access to your grades. Even that is part of like a planning mentality, right? Like giving people access so they can help you. I think that's a lot of it. I don't know what the numbers are for the wealth loss, but because people don't want to do it, it's kind of like you stick your head in the sand because dealing with mortality is not fun. Like nobody wants to talk about death. And then I've had situations where I've had customers, especially during COVID. COVID was a time for estate planning. Business was booming.
That's when ours happened.
And truly, we could not. People were beating down the doors to get their estate plan because being confronted with mortality will make it a priority. And so I had all sorts of people come in, terminally ill people who were my age. I was in my 30s, coming in with kids that were my kids' age, where they knew they were going to die. And on top of dealing with their mortality, now they're signing paperwork, trying to decide all these things instead of just having time. That you're now coming out, and it's like COVID, so we have all these protocols, and you're immunocompromised. It's just so much, right? And I've had customers who've died. Clients who've died and passed away before their time. I get calls from time to time, and it's always people who are in an age where you're supposed to do that when you're in your 80s, not when you're in your 40s, and much less your 30s, right? And so it's always the right time to estate plan because tomorrow's not promised for anyone. And just think of the mess you leave when you don't do anything. Somebody has to pay, somebody has to drive and take time, go to court, hire an attorney, pay their fees, pay their retainer, before you can even see if there's anything there to help with out of your estate. Why not give the gift of estate planning by just, this is your life, you are an adult, let's start getting your affairs in order, right?
And I think also too, like we used to, like you said, like 18 seems like a young age now, but now we're in the age of NIL with college students, so they're making millions. So like
they need estate plans.
They need estate planning now. Like I know I was a broke college student, but like now some of these college students have millions of dollars. So definitely very important for them to start estate planning very, very early.
How do you I think that's part of the myth as well, though, is that you have to have a certain amount accumulation of money. Like it's all. I feel like for us, it's like when you hear that, it sounds real fancy. Like, man, that's for the rich people. I feel like there's a lot of people.
That's probably why people don't do estate plans, because they're like, well, I don't have an estate.
I don't have anything.
You're like, an estate should be like acreage.
That's what you see when you hear anybody say.
You're like, man, they definitely got something that people gonna be fighting over. It's like, man, I ain't got nothing but $2 $1 bills running each other in my pocket.
Some people are like, all I have to pass on is my debt. And so, I think part of it is the branding of it. When you think of estate, you think of wealth, you think of money, and people don't identify with that. I have customers at the bank who are millionaires that still don't think that they're wealthy. Like they don't do estate planning. So that's just the other side of it, is that yeah, you might feel like, yeah, it's not really for me because I don't even have the money to do it and I have nothing to pass on. But if you look around your room and you see like, okay, I got a dining table, I got clothes in my closet, I got books on my shelf, I've got a TV, I've got my PS5 or whatever people are into, right? Even if you're renting, right? You still have belongings. You still have things that people are going to have to wrap up for you. And so there is a benefit to do that. No, it doesn't have to be super detailed. And that's the beauty of working with a professional so that you can figure out what works for you. And it doesn't, and if you have kids, you have to have an estate plan. Because if you don't plan for your children, that is a really big disservice to them. If they're minor, they cannot inherit without having somebody to steward that for them. And the process to do it outside of an estate plan is a lot more expensive than if you just plan for it, right? And so that has nothing to do with how much money you have. Most people who have kids, like whether or not you have money, you still need to provide for them. If they're under the age of 18, they're not adults, which means you can't put them down and say, well, I want my stuff to just go to my kids. Like they can't receive it because there has to be a way for it to be held for them. And that is a legal process, and that's expensive, right? And so better for you to say, okay, something should happen to me or the other parent, I would like my sister to be in charge, right? And have that designated. Oh, also, here's the pot of money that I have allocated so you can help raise my child and have them have, or I want to point this life insurance that I bought to the benefit of my child, not maybe directly to them because they're minors again, but if you have a trust set up, that money, even though you may not have it today, you're paying for $100,000 of life insurance, right? You can set up a trust where that money will then fund the trust. That's how you have a trust funded. You don't necessarily see the money while you're alive, but you can do things like that even if you don't feel like you have money to make sure that that is in place.
Can we talk about trust a little bit about like how do we set those up? And there's kind of two type of trust. There's a revocable and irrevocable trust.
Yeah. Before we get to trust, I'm going to talk about wills and contracts that live trust. Go ahead. So a lot of people talk about wills, right? A will is your last will and testament is the full name of a will, right? And these are your wishes. Upon your death, this is what you want to happen to your belongings, to everything you own. You can designate in detail or as, as basically as you want to. That is your will. That only goes into effect when you're dead. So whatever you want to put in your will not apply until you die. Remember when I talked about the powers of attorney? That only applies while you're alive. Right? So when you're dead, that's over. Reverse it with the will. Only when you code does that go into effect, right? When you have a will, you still have to have somebody go to court and go through a process called probate. That is a public process. Everyone can see who you're leaving your assets to. So if they have debts or creditors, they can make claims on your estate in order to get their, hey, that person is about to inherit a house, but they owe me and they haven't paid me. I'm going to make a claim on that estate to get my cut before that money is dispersed or that property is dispersed to them. You also have to post it. It's public so people can look and see what you're doing. It's not a private process. When you think of a trust, it is a private process, right? So Dom, you set up a trust and you are the trustee of the Dom Trust or whatever you want to call it, right? You're managing that as the trustee while you're alive, right? When you pass away, you can say, well, my spouse is going to take over, right? Or maybe you're co-trustees and then whoever the surviving spouse takes over. And then when that person dies, it then basically becomes irrevocable. If you do a revocable living trust, it is a living trust that is, you can change it while you're alive. You can use it for your health, education, maintenance support for you, for your family, for any causes you want. You can put investments in there. You can put your house in there. You're going to manage your own trust, right? You're alive. You're putting stuff. I'm writing checks from my trust. I'm doing whatever I want out of my trust account. When the trustees, the original trustees die, whether it's a single person or co-trustees, it then becomes irrevocable, which means it cannot be changed. And whatever your wishes are in that trust will then be carried out by whoever the successor is.
Okay.
And so that means whoever comes in after you to take over the management of your trust is going to follow the wishes. It's basically whatever you've written out and however you funded it. And so if you think of a trust, like I'm going to use your cup as like a bucket. And so I'm going to put my house in here, my life insurance. When I die, I'm going to go in here. My brokerage accounts, go ahead and point them in here. Okay. I'm going to put all of these avenues of what I've built in this life into my trust.
Okay.
And while I'm alive, it's going to be for me. And then when I die, it's going to be for whoever else I want it to go to, my descendants, my favorite university, my charities, whatever you want. Yeah. But you have to have somebody who's going to be able to say, okay, that's his bucket, and I'm going to disperse it according to the wishes. Okay. That's where somebody like my position, a trust officer, would come in, because they're the ones who are going to be a corporate trustee. Like, they're a professional who is then going to say, okay, well, your kid comes and says, I would like to buy a Maserati. You know, like, I know there's money in our trust. Yeah. And a trust officer would look at that and say, well, that doesn't really follow the intent of the
trust,
the trustor, the person who created the trust.
Okay.
And so you can get a Honda Civic, okay? And so that's what that, making sure that those resources that you've gathered and put there are stewarded correctly.
Because I definitely know my oldest son, he'll probably try to get a Maserati. Like, he loves cars.
Get that Civic. They gonna give him that Civic.
That's right. That's what I started with, is a Toyota Tercel, and then I upgraded to, which you probably never even heard of, and then I got a Honda Civic. And so it's basically, like I said earlier, you don't have to think about it like, okay, what can I use to finance my trust? You can use things like insurance. You can put your home in it. So you may not live the lifestyle now, but there are people who have insurance that, that's going to change their descendants or their family's lives if they have access to that kind of money. You want to make sure it's stewarded well, right? And so
absolutely.
That's a wealth building tool that might be available.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Like, I was just thinking about when you said your home, like, I could, I guess, essentially put in there, hey, when I die, like, I don't have to leave it to my kids. I can say, I want you guys to sell it, and then I want to disperse those funds. Oh, okay.
And that's something a trustee does every day. Okay. Basically, they would sell it. They would have an estate sale, liquidate it, and you say, I want it divided in this many ways. That's part of the job. Or I want it invested individually and then dispersed monthly in this way. Or they have this allotment per year, a percentage of what's in the pot.
Can I break it down to say, hey, at 18, I want them to get this percent, at 25, this percent, at 40, this percent. Okay, yeah.
I heard it some.
Yeah, you educated us at the cookout. What I was going to say, so what's the, you kind of broke out what's the difference between a trust and a will. What are some misconceptions about cost and fees when it comes to estate planning and trust and will and things of that nature?
You're going to find every kind of attorney. First of all, I'm a big advocate of going to professionals. Like you said at the beginning, we're going to get a professional in here. So I'm never going to, there's a lot of services out there that the AI can do it for you. I would never go that route, because I'll just be very frank.
No, go ahead,
Lawyers win, okay? The system is set up. Like, if you do nothing and you need to help shut down a family member's estate, you're going to pay a lawyer. Like, at a certain level, you're probably going to pay a lawyer. If you do something and, there's a conflict, you're going to pay a lawyer, right? So whether you do it on the front end or the back end, I always say the lawyers win, right?
Okay.
So the goal is to try to mitigate that cost by doing it on your own term. And you're going to find that it runs the gamut. You're going to find lawyers that will charge hourly for services. Okay. And I know there might be people who are not in Arkansas that are listening, so I don't ever want to say it should be X amount, because it depends.
Depends on for sure.
When I was in private practice, I did a flat fee. So if somebody just needed a will and their, we call them ancillary documents, like your powers of attorney, your healthcare directive, like your living will, which is an end-of-life directive, I would just quote a flat fee. Okay. But if they needed a trust included, I would quote a flat fee. But if they wanted to move like lots of properties, that's where you can give them an estimate before you start. And so there are two ways. There's a hourly fee, and then you can have a flat fee of service that you pay and you get it. And I don't know if you went through that when you worked with a planner.
I think we did flat. I think ours was
so a lot of estate planning can be flat fee depending on the complexity of what they have to do for you. Like, you know, like there are some people that, you know, it is like, I don't have a lot of family. It's just me and maybe a sibling, or just you and maybe nobody else. But that's going to be different than someone who's in part of a blended family and they're trying to figure out, you know, whose kids get what. So it can get complex. I would say like it would probably start in the low thousands, which is it sounds like a deterrent, right? Yeah. So what I've seen here in Northwest Arkansas, I've seen it range from I've seen people go as low as like at 800. I like to give people numbers, but truly, like, I want people to understand like the range. You can start in like the high hundreds, you know, or maybe $1,000 and go into tens of thousands of dollars. But I would say probably in the low thousands, it would cost in this part of the country to get your estate plan done. So from like $1,500 to maybe about $5,000 if it's pretty simple, right? And you could probably find. So if you're within that range, it sounds like a lot of money, but probate can be a lot more expensive.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's what my next question was. You talked about probate earlier, like one, not only the cost, but like how long does that drag out?
Yeah, it can take a long time if you have people contesting or mom told me I'm supposed to get this, right? Or if somebody doesn't even have a will and then you're going through that process without, it could be a long time, right? And so, yes, like I said, lawyers win either way, right? Yeah. So if you can control the cost, the benefit of setting up a trust is that you don't have to go through the court system, right? So that is managed privately. People don't see what's in your trust. And that's why people use trusts as a planning tool, because you're like streamlining how the passing of the estate goes. Versus if you have a will, you will have to go to court and have that will probated and go in front of a judge and make sure all of the, you still have to do that with a trust. It's not a tax evasion scheme like that. It's not, it's just private. It's not like tax evasion. I always tell people I do not facilitate the evasion of taxes.
Are there tax breaks or things when you set up like? It
depends on how you do it. I am not a tax professional, so I can't speak at all to taxes.
Yeah. Well, we talk about staying in your lane. No, you definitely dropped some gems on us today. And as Alex liked to say, when you come to the cookout, you're gonna leave with more than food on your plate. Yeah. And so, like, what are one or two things you want our listeners to take away from today's episode?
For anyone listening, it is so important that you do something with this information, whether that's to pass it on to loved ones, to parents, to adult children who might need the information, to your partner or your spouse to get that going. And then I say, like, investigate one attorney in your region, or make a list of 3 and contact them. If price is your barrier, then contact them and ask about what they would charge for their services. If having conversations about, well, we don't agree on who would get our kids, then find somebody who can help you facilitate that conversation, because you don't want to go on your next trip and be like, I hope the plane doesn't go down, right? So whatever it is, like, I would say take the next best step, but do something, because not doing something means that the state already has a plan for you, right? And then for those who've already done their estate plan, maybe you've like, man, I don't know if I have all of the components. So again, you're going to want to make sure you have all the components under that umbrella, not necessarily just the will or a trust. I just have a trust, or I just have a power of attorney. You want a complete estate plan. So make sure you know that you have a complete estate plan. And if you've done it in the past, have it reviewed every 5 years or whenever there's a life event, like a birth, a death, a divorce, a retirement, someone hits the age of majority, like one of your kids turns 18, have that reviewed to make sure it's still saying what you want it to say.
Alex, what you got for us today, man?
I would say similar to what we've talked about in other conversations is it's not too late. So if you're hearing this, seeing this, don't let that fear of death, paralyze the decision making. get in there and, you know, get after it. You know, I would say, you know, having seen this, you know, firsthand, although you're not here, not doing it can cause a lot of trauma and separation and splitting of the family. Because for me, man, money can make people do some strange, some bad, just some things overall that you would not want to see your family do.
Right.
And succumb to just because of, you know, money. So in order to eliminate that, just, you know, don't let that fear, you know, paralyze you from getting out there and get it done. It'll be a great decision. And, you know, even though I almost think of it as an investment.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't talk about investment in this episode, but you're investing in solidifying, you know, your families and your loved ones' future, you know, with the least amount of trauma and drama possible. So that's what I would put on my to go plate. And I would also probably say, like, we gotta, these things that we've learned, like, let's just talk about it. Like, it won't if you're doing it with the right intentions, I don't think it will hurt anyone's feelings, you know, to talk about salaries, to talk about, hey, what am I doing in my investment portfolio? I think that the way that we can help each other and not be so like, hey, no, this is my business and I don't want this person to know, like, just have a regular conversation about it and we can all learn from each other in these spaces.
I think I'll kind of reiterate kind of what both of you all said. One, watch this episode, rewatch this episode, share with multiple people. Don't be afraid to get started. Like, it's not, like you said, it's not too late. Hey, if you felt like you should have known this, I promise you there's some things that I didn't know as well. Like, I'm learning today as well. And so there's some things that I need to get started on as well. And I think, like what you said, I think financial literacy kind of brings about freedom. Not freedom only for yourself, but for your loved ones. On taking that burden of, mom or dad would have wanted us to do this. No, like, mom and dad told us what they wanted us to do if they came into an incapacitated state. And then now mom and dad told us what they wanted us to do after they left. So you've given yourself freedom and your family freedom to grieve you properly. And then also to you're leaving something behind as well and not leaving it up to the state to disperse your assets. So that's what I have to put on my to-go plate.
I love that, the to-go plate. With some foil on top.
Speaking of the cookout,
she set that up, man.
What are you bringing to the cookout? And then what are you putting on your to-go plate as well?
What's your ultimate to-go plate at the cookout?
Yeah, I'm bringing some Basque chocolate cheesecake to the cookout.
Wait a minute.
Well,
It's a cake from, like, this region of Spain called Basque region. And you burn it a little bit, and it's, like, made out of chocolate, and it's a little jiggly. It's, like, very moussey chocolate cake. So I got to put it on ice because if it's hot,
it's just,
we can't do it. It's got to stay. So that's what I'm taking to the cookout. I'm going to be on the dessert train. I'm staying away from, you know, the potato salads and the mac and cheese. I'm not going to put that responsibility on myself. I'm bringing what I know.
Big responsibility.
You ain't going to talk bad about me at the cookout, though, man.
I'm bringing what I know. I know it's going to be a crowd pleaser. So low conflict there. And then on my plate, I am going to put the mac and cheese on my plate. I'm not taking potato salad because you got to keep it cold. I want some brisket. I want some chicken. I want the beans. Oh, my mouth is smelling.
I don't know what the camera picked that up. But
so I'm taking the fixins and I'm going home and I'm going to take some desserts as well.
Good. Hey, that's hard to beat right there.
Yeah, once again, we appreciate you. Sharing your knowledge with us. Hey, we appreciate you joining us at the cookout. Hey, until next time. See you.